I think that as a Florida resident, he didn't give an answer about would you have signed the heartbeat bill that Florida did. They had all the exceptions that people talk about. The legislature put it in. I signed the bill. I was proud to do it. He won't answer whether he would sign it or not.
He is that which Ron DeSantis will not say the name of, which is Donald Trump. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis earlier today addressing his reaction to Donald Trump, calling Florida's 6-week abortion ban too harsh. Joining us now to discuss, Jason Miller, senior advisor to the Trump campaign. Jason, appreciate it. It's been a long time. Is Donald Trump vulnerable on abortion?
No, people know that President Trump is the most pro-life president that we've had in our nation's history. Not only has he appointed several very conservative judges who he believes made the right decision in the Dobbs case, they know that he has led on every effort, being the first president go to the Right to Life march. And the president has said that he thinks that because that decision was right, that should be decided, at the state level, whether state legislature or other measures. President Trump is having a number of conversations with pro-life leaders. He has said that he's open to and discussing the possibility of what a national piece of legislation might look like, but I'm not going to get ahead of the president at this moment.
All right. Fair enough. I just want to hate to interject here, but Ronald Reagan also went to the Right to Life march as a Republican president. I think what's interesting, though, and I couldn't help but notice it. It's almost like Hashem in the Jewish religion. You never say the word God, right? You say the name. And I'm wondering what you make of the fact that Ron DeSantis still to this day, a week or two ahead of announcing for the presidential race, will not say Donald Trump's name by name.
Well, I think Governor DeSantis is going to find out that life comes at you fast when you're running for president. Not only is he looking to get into this race where all of a sudden when you jump in, people start shooting at you from different directions, you're going to have to defend your own record. But Ron DeSantis is effectively running against the incumbent president in the sense that he's running against President Trump, the person who's been the standard bearer for the party for much of the last 7 or 8 years. And so DeSantis is going to have to figure out what is that value proposition he brings to the race, because if the Rolling Stones are playing, no one wants to go see the Rolling Stones tribute band. I haven't seen any indication of what Governor DeSantis thinks that his value proposition as a candidate would be. However, President Trump is already making moves both with the primary and the general, and poll after poll is showing that he's beating Joe Biden in the general election.
All right, and you're right. I think the Real Clear Politics average right now has Donald Trump up by 0.7 right now, is what we saw earlier today. Wanted to play this for you. This is Ron DeSantis's other criticism of Donald Trump, again, not by name, in Iowa. Take a listen.
There's no substitute for victory. We must reject the culture of losing that has infected our party in recent years. The time for excuses is over. We got to demonstrate the courage to lead and the strength to win.
All right. Can President Trump, forget the general and forget the primary in the nomination for the moment, can he do what he didn't do in 2016, which is win Iowa?
Oh, as far as President Trump, absolutely he can win Iowa. I think what you're seeing with the 2024 campaign is a mix of the spontaneity and also the nimbleness of the 2016 campaign, but now with the experience of having run for president twice before, having the infrastructure, having the team, having the data from all of the people who've attended rallies, who've signed up to email lists, who are donors. So President Trump absolutely can win Iowa. I believe we will. He's also in great shape in New Hampshire and South Carolina. And you look at the polling right now, boy, Ron DeSantis is a lot closer to Vivek Ramaswamy than he is to President Trump.
No, look, the polling is the polling, and there's no question about that. As we look, if we look back in 2024 at key moments, President didn't go to Iowa this weekend. Ron DeSantis did. He was there. He owned the news cycle over the past couple of days, and will likely own the news cycle with his announcement going into Memorial Day. In hindsight, was not going to Iowa this weekend a mistake?
Well, to make sure everybody knows, and especially with a lot of the old WGN audience in the Midwest that understands this, when you have a tornado watch that goes off, folks in Iowa take that very seriously. I was in Iowa. I went out on Friday, and so I was there along with a couple other members from our campaign team. And I can tell you, not only was it raining cats and dogs, but as soon as that tornado watch went out, everyone's scattered. You could look downtown Des Moines. There wasn't a car on the street, wasn't a person walking around. They take that very serious. And so that's why President Trump's rally had to be postponed. We'll be back and do it. But Leland, I don't think you can discount the big spread right now that's in the polls for President Trump, not only nationally in the primary, in these early states, but also in the general election, where poll after poll shows President Trump ahead. That's a sign of true strength right now.
Thanks for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find News Nation on your television provider. And don't forget to subscribe. Click the red button to get more of News Nation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.